Hi, I'm JJ and welcome to JJ's Wargames rigging tutorial part 3, in which I look at French and Spanish running rigging. The system of rigging demonstrated in this video applies equally well to French and Spanish ships, and in this first section I take a look at running lifts and braces on the mizzen mast. As you will see, Franco-Spanish running rigging follows a similar pattern in that the top yard is rigged separately from the lower yard or yards. In this case, the top yard is rigged down to the top boom up top the spanker sail, with the lower yard being rigged to the main mast. Here you can see a model of a frigate that I'd prepared with the standing rigging and sails all in place, as demonstrated in the previous videos looking at British running rigging. So, starting with the mizzen mast, you can see here the application of the line to set up the lifts on that top yard, which consists of basically tying off the line at the top of the mast, applying a dab of super glue to each end of the yard and wrapping round to create two relatively equal lengths of thread. Here you can see I'm just pulling those lines down to make sure they are taut, creating the lifts on that upper yard. The next stage is to take one of the lines. Here I'll be taking the line coming down from the left as seen in video and running it around the ends of the booms on the spanker sail. Similarly as done in British running rigging, but this is only really the only rigging point for the top yard. So just take that round, making sure the glue has got a really good hold on the line. And as you can see, I've still got another end of the line available, so with the glue still wet, I'm able to wrap that around just the top boom, creating those two lengths of line, which I'm going to take down to the anchoring points on the stern of the ship, where the standing rigging is rigged up on the mizzen mast. And here you can see just taking the first of those two lines through, and I will look to create a simple tie over. This is where the tweezers again come in really handy for this kind of work, just making sure it doesn't tangle as you create the tie over. Pull that down firmly, get it in a good position, and then with an application of some super glue, that can help lock down that tie over on the aft hull. Similarly, just taking the other end of the line, as you can see, I just take that end through using the tweezers on that aft anchoring point, and again doing a simple over and under tie off, pulling that tight and creating the anchoring point, which is as before secured with a little dab of super glue, just making sure that is locked down firmly, and then tidying up with the micro scissors to produce the first part of the running rigging. And as you can see, it's a relatively simple arrangement that completes that look, and there you have it. So there you are, that's the upper lifts and braces on that top yard on the mizzen mast setup, which now leaves us just to look at setting up the running rigging on the lower yard on the mizzen. And here you can see me just preparing the next line, and it's a separate line which I am just leading up through the lifts already created on that top yard, and it's a case of just threading that through. And this is where the point tweezers are really handy in this process for getting in and just directing the line for where you want it to go. So I've just taken it down through the two braces that I've already created attached to the top of the boom, and lining that up on the next yard down, because those are going to create the lifts that I want for that yard. Just checking the length on those lines before I apply them. So here goes the super glue on the first end of that second yard, and again the process is repeated with a twist around on the yard like so. In fact, I'm going back because, as you'll see, by taking the twist around backwards, it sets up the line for where I'm going to be actually leading this whole rigging arrangement. So likewise on the other side of the yard, simple dab of super glue, and I'm taking that line forwards and back as I twist around the end of the yard, because I want the line to come out in the direction that I want to take it, which is towards the mainmast, as you can see, as I'm just drawing that line taut to create the look of the lifts. So there we have the second set of lifts on that second yard. Now the idea here is to take the line around and behind the fighting top on that main mast, but also around and behind the standing rigging that we already have in place. And again, this is where the tweezers are really vital for doing this kind of thing. As you can see, not only to direct the thread, but also to make sure that it doesn't get tangled on the way round to where we want it, because we need that line coming from the yard, as you can see there in that shot, around the back of the mast. And now I'm going to take that line back and around. So just making sure that's lined up, no entanglements. Then we get a bit of super glue and apply it to the lower yard, and again just get it right in the right position with the super glue holding it. Just got to get it right. There we go, simple wrap around, and again that's going to provide me the line to take up to create the next set of lifts. So just getting the thread in the right position, and as you can see, I'm feeding it through again behind the standing rigging and the braces we've already created, and two sets of tweezers come in handy here just to pull that through, and we've already started to create the second set of lifts on the mizzen mast. Little dab of glue on the end of that lower yard, and then it's just a case of bringing that line down, and then as you can see, I'm still taking the line around and towards the main mast as I turn it on that yard, so it's following the same pattern as the other lifts. And there you have, you can see the two sets of lifts. And then we need to just finish off by bringing the other bracing line around. So I'm taking it so that this is from the other side, the other line that I'd already had. There's always two lengths of the line here to work with. Taking that down through the fighting top, underneath the fighting top on that main mast, bringing it over that yard, that lower yard on the main mast, and bringing it around to the lower yard where we've already just tied off one of the lines, and likewise doing a twist around to complement. And that is the braces and lifts completed on the mizzen. In with the micro scissors, carefully snip off, and there we have the mizzen mast rigged up with braces and lifts. With the lifts and braces on the mizzen mast completed, we can now turn attention to lifts and braces on the main mast. And here from the ship you can see, and the diagram that follows, the arrangement follows a similar pattern where we need to establish the lifts and braces on the top yard of the main mast first. In the model that you're going to see, I've already started the work on those lifts and braces on that top yard by tying off on the centre of the mast as normal, but just running a bit of the line to the far end of the yard and taking the rest of the line down. So down from there, as you see with the tweezers, and I'm leading that line through the back of the mizzen mast just above the second spar. And as you can see, I'm now, having taken that line through and under the sail, taking it around the back of the mast and trying to take the other end through. Now the thing is, you've got to get it through those two bracing lines that are already up on the mizzen. There we are, we've taken the line through, and that allows us now to just put a little dab of glue on the other end of that upper yard on the main, take the line and take it up to the top yard point, and with a little twist around, finish off, and there we have that first set of lines, which just need tidying up, which we've done. Now again, here we go with the next set of the rigging, which is to set up the other lifts on the other yards. So taking the line through the upper yard lifts, around the back of the mast, back down through, as I'm just threading here, get hold of it with the tweezers, and we're going to look to take that through, as you can see, behind the braces we've already set up for that upper yard, so that we can bring that line down. Bit of super glue on the end of the second yard. There we go. Make sure there's plenty of glue for the line to be able to get a good solid fixing point, and then making sure the line is taut, a little twist around, hold in place, and there you can see we've created the first lift on that second yard. And now we can put a little bit of glue on the other end, and again lining it up on the end, little twist around, and again we've created the second lift. Now you can see the bulk of the line is all in one direction, so we're now going to take it, once we can get the end clearly put in now, and bring it to the camera just to show you where we've taken this down through. So the question is to feed the line around the base of the mizzen mast. I've got to get it in behind that first set of ratlins and standing rigging to allow the other end to come out below the lower boom of the spanker sail at the bottom of the mizzen mast, feed it around and behind the other set of ratlins on the other side to allow me to pull that line out, as you can see, watching for any entanglements on the way, and there you have it. So that line is leading down from that second spar on the main mast all the way down to the base of the mizzen mast and under the lower boom on that spanker sail. Then it's a question of just putting a dab of glue on the lower spar, end of the lower spar, taking the line to that point, getting it to get a grip. Now, some of these furled sail spars, there's not much of an end to actually get a grip onto, so sometimes it's just a question of holding it in place. Taking the line now and feeding it up to a position just above that second yard, which allows me to feed it behind the mast and bring it down to create the next lifts. It's just got entangled there on the second yard, and there we are, we've created that first lift on that lower yard. Again, another little bit of glue on the end, and I'm having to just rest that against the end of the yard because there's nothing to twist around. It's not that well defined on the plastic, but you can get enough of a grip to actually pull back against it to get the tension. And as you can see, similar process as before, behind the ratlins and the back braces, around under that lower boom on the mizzen, feed it through behind the other ratlins and braces, and there we have the other end coming out again. And this time we're going to lead it up to our final tie-off point, which is where we started the process really, which is on that end of that second yard on the main mast. Bring the line up, get it onto the glue, little twist around to finish it off, like so. Just got to hold it there for a second or two while the glue gets a firm hold. And there you can see two little bits of line coming out from that yard, which we now go in with the micro scissors just to snip off the ends to tidy up the whole arrangement. That's one of them dealt with, and we just finish off that second one like so. And there we have it, the mizzen and the main mast fully rigged up with their lifts and braces for the running rigging, which enables us now to turn our attention to the arrangement on the foremast. Again, the pattern of establishing the running rigging on the foremast follows that of those on the other masts, in that the first section to address is the upper yard on the foremast itself, which has its own rigging arrangement line with the lines going back towards the main mast as its fixing point. So taking a long piece of line suitable to do that, I've got the model in place, and I start the whole process off as with the others by just tying off on the top of that foremast, right close to the top, with just a shorter end of the line leading out to the end of the top yard closest to camera. A little bit of dab of super glue that allows me then to bring round and twist off that first shorter end of line to create the first lift on that upper yard. You can be relatively robust with these masts. The plastic is quite forgiving, and it does allow you then to get a really good taut line representing the weight bearing of those lifts. Again, another little bit of dab of super glue on the opposite end will allow a similar process on the other end of the yard, and again just twisting around to create that second lift. As you can see, these masts are quite forgiving, and you can be quite robust to get the taut action through the line that you want to create. So that's the first set of lifts created on that upper yard. Then it's just a case of taking the line through and under the sail above the second yard on the main mast. There I am feeding it through. Again, I've got to get that line around the back of the mast and in between it and the standing rigging that's already in place, so that I can feed it through, and then, as you can see, just push it through to the other way, other side. Just get the end with the pinpoint tweezers. There it is, it's come through. So just got to get hold of that, and as you can see, there's quite a loop around that mizzen mast, so just lift that out of the way as you draw it through carefully. There it goes. A lot of satisfaction in doing this rigging process when it all starts to come together. It's a very satisfying process. And then take the end of that line out and around, and there we've created the rigging for that top yard on the foremast. Just make sure that's in place, and holding that in place just before I bring in the micro scissors to snip off and just tidy up like so. Got to be careful here that you don't inadvertently cut into any of the standing rigging that's already in place. Very easy to do if this isn't done carefully. I'd really emphasise that. It's quite disappointing to see standing rigging suddenly flop because you've cut it. Now we're going to move on to the next set of braces and lifts on the lower 2 yards as indicated in the diagram, and it follows a similar process to that that we did on the main mast. So again, we're feeding the line up and through the lifts we've already constructed on the top of that foremast. As you can see, this is definitely a job for these tweezers. Can't overemphasize this point. The right tools will only make this job simpler. Push down through, get hold of the end there. As you can see, it just poking through under that second set of lifts on the other side, and guiding that down, because I want to be able to tie that off on that end of the second yard. Once we've got it through, dab of glue on the end of the yard, like so, and then making sure the line is taut by holding it on the other side, wrapping round and getting a good firm anchoring point to begin the process of rigging up the whole of this forward mast. A little bit of glue on the other side of the yard enable us to take the line on the other side down to it to create the second lifts. It's just a case of getting that in position before taking the line around. Again, so I'm going forwards and back so I can bring the line in the direction I want it. Then it's coming round. You can get your finger in to hold it on while you go round. And now that line is going in the direction I want it to go, which is back towards the main mast. Now again, similarly, we've got to get this in behind the ratlins on the main mast, bring it around the base of the main mast, and as you draw it taut, it will naturally lead the line up to and underneath the furled sail on that lower yard on the main mast. Then it's just a case of putting a dab of glue on the end of the lower yard on the foremast. Again, there's not much to twist around here on here, so just anchoring it as best you can will enable you then to get the tweezers and feed the line back again in at the point where the second yard is fixed on the foremast. I'm leading it around and behind. There it goes. Quite a bit of line here, so you have to watch that it doesn't get tangled on the way through. You can see there's quite a bird's nest of line there that I've got to try and feed through. Gently does it. And there we go. No, it's caught on the forward end of that mast, on that sail rather. Just getting a hold of the tweezers just to direct it the way you want it. And we've created the next lift on that lower yard. So then all we need to do then is to get the line taut, and a little dab of super glue on the lower yard will allow us to fix up the line appropriately. Again, it's just a question of anchoring it there. You can see there I'm not twisting it, I'm just anchoring it on the slight protrusion of the lower mast because we've got a furled sail that really doesn't give much else to get a grip on. And now we're back to that same process of directing the line around and behind that main mast, the base of the main mast, but you've got to get it in behind the ratlins that are already set up, and then get hold of it and bring it round the other side behind the opposite set of ratlins. And you can see there the line drawing through very carefully to make sure it doesn't tangle or pull anything else. And again, by drawing it up, it automatically positions it where the other line went through at the base of the furled sail on the main mast. Little dab of glue at our starting point, which is on that second yard where we tied off the other end of the line. A little twist round and you get it in position. And there we have it. 2 lengths of line just needing to be snipped off with the micro scissors to complete that running rigging. There we can see it. So just take that out, in with the micro scissors, snip that first bit of line off that we started the whole process with. There we go. And that just leaves us that long piece of line protruding. And we are almost done with the whole process of the running rigging. See, I'm getting in behind that top sail because it will give a really nice finish by snipping as tight and as close to the yard as we can. There we go. So there we are. That is the braces and lifts on the mast set up. Now we just got a few tasks to finish off our model. To complete the model, it just remains to fix up the pennant line and the braces on the staysails. So here you can see I'm just tying off a line right at the top of that main mast above those upper yard lifts with a little bit of super glue to anchor, like so. The reason why I do it so high is because as I demonstrated in the British ship, I want to feed the commissioning pennant through those upper lifts. So by having it high, it gives a position where I can apply that pennant. And there I'm just taking the line down through the rigging we've already created, and then finding a suitable anchoring point either in against the ratlins, or sometimes you can actually get through the anchoring point itself, and snipping off to create that pennant line. So that's already up and running. And then here you can see me just putting in the last of the staysail braces, a little bit of super glue on each corner. Let those braces get firm on those corners, and then it's just a question of taking them in and around the base of the foremast itself as a group, really, as a cluster of lines, and super gluing them in place. And then you can go in really close to that lower section of the foremast and snip off, and it just tidies up the ship. And there you have it, a frigate, either French or Spanish, with its complete set of lifts and braces for the running rigging, the staysail braces, and a commissioning pennant line ready to flag this vessel up as either French or a Spanish frigate. If you've not done any running rigging on these kind of models before, I hope this series of video tutorials will encourage you to have a go and get into the joys of running rigging. If you'd like to know more about how to model these 1/700th Napoleonic ships and to get a copy of my rigging PDF, then go to JJ's Wargames blog at the link seen above. Thank you.